Hare Krishna. So, as I mentioned, we are discussing chapter 12, which is Birth of Emperor Parikshit. And this is significant because Suta Goswami, if you remember, the sages of Naimisharanya, they had raised a question about, certain fundamental philosophical questions which we saw in the earlier chapters. And in chapter 2, he gave a nice answer. And then he said that all this is explained in Bhagavatam. And what is this Bhagavatam? It's a conversation between Parikshit and Sukdev Goswami, right? So Parikshit, the audience, and Sukdev Goswami, the speaker. Now, technically, when they asked about Parikshit, they want to know about it. See, Suta Goswami was very, very smart, because sometimes a student may ask a question which may be beyond their adhikar or their eligibility to understand. So what an expert teacher does is they create the qualification and then suitably answer the question, right? So this is so special about Suta Goswami, knowing that the sages of Naimisharanya, they had karma nishta, they had faith in the Vedic rituals, the karma kanda rituals. That's the reason why they assembled there Naimisharanya, wanting to do this great yagya. So he wanted for them to understand a very deep devotional book like Bhagavatam. He wanted to give them the qualification to enter into the realm of bhakti. And how does he do that? Very interesting. If you actually see all the previous chapters, was Suta Goswami's trick to somehow introduce Krishna in the conversation and charm their heart, especially if you've seen the last two chapters, which we discussed in our previous session. So if you see the previous chapter, how the emotions of separation and celebration, how these are very, very pure devotional emotions. So when the sages of Naimisharanya heard this, when they heard Krishna's description from Kunti, Krishna's description from Bhishma, the love that the Pandavas had, how Krishna is always protecting his devotees, and then the grand crescendo of Krishna's, how the mood of the devotees, how they feel such intense pain when the Lord is separating from them, and how they experience such intense joy when the Lord is reuniting with them. When such a deep devotional discussion happened, the sages of Naimisharanya, their whole heart transformed from what they were as from their faith from the Vedic rituals to a more devotional mindset, right? And that's a speciality of a guru. The thing that the guru does is he gives us the qualification, like what Suta Goswami did. Second, after giving the qualification, he guides. That's the second qualification of the spiritual master. Just like how Suta Goswami is guiding, the sages through the entire rest of Bhagavatam, giving them the training, giving them the education, right? Many times we identify the word guru, the equivalent synonym sometimes we think is a teacher, right? But teacher is only one who teaches. But guru is a much deeper connotation. The guru creates qualification. He gives qualification. He is the giver. He is the guide. He trains us. And more importantly, the guru will always remain the eternal guardian, protecting the conditioned soul all the way till their final destination, till the end journey beyond this world, right? So this is the role a spiritual master plays. That's why if you see Vyasa, he has compiled so many literature. If you are interested in rituals, okay, here I have this section of Vedas that talk about rituals, but somewhere in the rituals, at the end of every swaha, you will say, Idam Vishnave Namaha, right? Oh, why are we always calling Vishnu? Or sometimes if you do a more devotional ritual, they'll be like, idam Krishnaya, idam namama. Why everything is for Krishna and not for me? Oh, what is so special? So if you're doing some Vedic rituals, if you're actually carefully listening to the mantras, somewhere you say, oh, I need to know about Krishna. Why every mantra is ending with idam Krishnaya, idam namama, this is for Krishna, not for me. What is so special about Krishna? Right? Or if you are into a very intellectual kind of a person, you want to read all the Upanishads, right? And you go to the Upanishads and then you'll understand how there is this Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagwan, and there is a Param Satyam, right? Oh, who is this Param Satya? I want to understand. Let me understand the absolute truth. Then again, they will come to Bhagavad Puran and say, right, the very first verse, Satyam Param Dhimahi, meditate on that absolute truth. Oh, Vyasa has always mentioned about the absolute truth throughout the Upanishads. In this book, he is describing the absolute truth. Let me read about the absolute truth. So, even if you are a knowledge seeker, like a Jnani, even then you'll be channelized to come to Bhagavatam, right? Or, even if you just like to read stories, you like to read Mahabharat, like it's the original soap opera, family soap opera, right? And when you read that, somewhere in between the Mahabharat, literally, the most exciting point of Mahabharat is the war, because all the entire story leads up to that war. And exactly before the war, he squeezes the pill of Bhagavad Gita, right? And anybody who reads the Bhagavad Gita would want to know more. Again, they'll come to Bhagavatam. So you see, Vyasa also, he not only does he give the qualification through his books, he guides us, right? And of course, we seek therefore blessings from Vyasdev, and Vyasdev is represented in our life as a guru, as a spiritual master, like Sutta Goswami, like so many others, and who remain as our guardians. Therefore, this Vyasa Purnima, Vyasa Puja is a very, very special occasion where we acknowledge the role of the Guru in our life as the giver, as the guide, and as the guardian. Now, what is the best homage we can give to our spiritual master is to become an ideal student, right? It's fashionable to identify yourself with a group or with a guru, or right, so on, right? But that's not the point. The idea is here, it's not a fashion status, it's not something that you put on your Instagram status, right? Or you make some post on tomorrow's occasion with somebody's photograph and some nice heartfelt poetry following that. That's not the point, right? Because accepting a spiritual master means allowing your life to be guided by their instructions, or in other words, a disciple means one who follows the discipline as set by the spiritual master. So therefore, the best homage we can give to our teachers, to the guru figures in our life, is to become a best student. So what does it take to become a best student will be the main subject of our today's discussion, which we will see from the early life of Parikshit. And this chapter is very significant because later on, those of you who know the story, Parikshit, he gives up his kingdom when when that time comes, and he just goes, sits in the banks of Ganga and listens to Sukadeva Goswami, listen to Bhagavatam for 7 days and 7 nights, without food, without water, right? We hear that part of Parikshit. But it's not that suddenly one morning he woke up and said, yes, from today I'm a spiritualist. A whole lifetime was spent in preparation. So what was the preparation he made? What was his early childhood samskaras? In fact, as in a sense, we are also children in our spiritual journey. So what does it take? Or if you are literally dealing with somebody who's a child, what does it take to raise a spiritually minded child? If you don't have a child around you, your mind is the best child to deal with. Right? So either an external child or an internal child, we have a child to deal with. So how to deal with them? So that's a very powerful chapter coming up. So Sutta Goswami, he brings the setting back to how the, the the deadly Brahmastra, as it was released, and as a Brahmastra, Ashwadhama's Brahmastra, it literally burnt to death this body of Parikshit Maharaj. And so the Lord, very beautiful description is given that how Angushta Matram Amalam, Angushta means like the measure of a thumb. That was a size. You remember Kunti Devi, she described to us how Krishna entered into the womb of Uttara and protected Parikshit. It is described that Angushta Matra, he was a size of a thumb, but he was completely transcendental. And Spurat Purata Maulinam, and he had this very beautiful, beautiful blackish golden complexion. And he was wearing this helmet that is gold and wore a dress which is of lightning yellow. And this was the form that Parikshit saw in his very childhood, right? And it said that he saw the Lord enriched with 4 hands. And he had earrings of molten gold, and his eyes were furious, blood red with fury, because he was so upset at the heinous crime that Ashwadhama did, right? And as the Lord was moving around inside the womb, he saw the club constantly encircling him like a meteor, right? And with his blazing power, the Lord, he destroyed that Brahmastra. Now all this is happening when Parikshit was inside the womb. So very powerful lesson for us is how spiritual education begins from inside the womb. This was such an important Vedic concept that how, educating a child is not something that you do at the age of 5 when you enroll them in the school. Spiritual education begins straight from the womb, right? It's a whole journey starting from womb to tomb. Spiritual education happens, right? So our impressions, that's why even how the child is conceived, at that level itself, there are certain Vedic samskaras that the parents undergo so that, the right impressions are given to the child. So our first training begins straight from the womb. And then when this beautiful child was born, it is said that this is also a very important point. As soon as a child is born, they do something called a Jati Samskaras. Basically, they arrange a astrologer to check for the charts of the child to see how the zodiac influences are on the child, right? So they do a astrological prediction. This is one of the important samskaras, important rituals that are done in the Vedic culture. And why this samskara is done? To understand, of course, we need to understand the depth of astrological science. Now, astrology is a very powerful indicative science, right? Now, astrology does not prove about fatalism that, okay, now it's written, it has to happen. But it's a great indication as to which direction the child can go. So accordingly, that kind of training is given, right? So this is also a very important aspect, that how one in the Vedic education, how astrology was used as a supporting tool, right? So that it helps you predict the child's nature, the path that they will take, the profession that they will take up to, the place they will eventually reside. So based on all this, suitably the parents and the teacher would guide the children, right? So that's the level of sophistication that was used. When the child was born itself, their entire full life plan is made, and the planning was done. Okay, at this stage I need to give this to the child, this stage I have to give this to the child. So that's how deep the planning goes, right? That's the second level. So first thing we understand is how bhakti begins from inside the womb itself. Second, these kind of tools, supporting tools like astrology, can also help in shaping the path ahead. Then Yudhishthir Maharaj, when the child Parikshit was born, he performed various Vedic samskaras. And one of the important samskaras that is done, ritual that is done, is it is Namakaran samskara, or the name giving samskara. Now today it is such a joke in the name of name giving samskara, because sometimes people take half of the father's name, half of the mother's name, and combine and create a new word which totally is non-existent, right? Or sometimes they will take some, especially if you are little Vedically inclined, people take some random Sanskritam word without even knowing what the meaning is, or sometimes distort that word little bit so that it sounds modern and start giving these kind of names, right? But the name giving ritual, we have to understand, name connects the child to destiny, right? Because see, name is your ultimate identity. Even in your dream, you will not forget your name. Even if you are, you suddenly change and from a student you become an astronaut or whatever, still your name will be the same, right? That is how deeply we are at a mental subconscious level, at the samskaric level, name is so deeply connected. So we are constantly meditating upon name. That's why during the time of spiritual initiation, along with the mantra, the guru changes your name. Now think of the Lord's name. Usually some Lord's name is given, like Nimai Lila Das, right? So Nimai is the name of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So by thinking of Nimai Lila, I'm indirectly remembering Lord Chaitanya, right? So that's how powerful name is. So you can't just give some random names, because names also carry some energy. So if you give some random names like Rahu, Ketu, without even knowing what it means, right? Some Danavas names. So you have to be very, very careful. It not only does it connect you to destiny, it also instills a sense of dharma within us. So that is why traditionally they would give names of great personalities of the past, so that, oh, may you be inspired by that personality of the past in taking certain life decisions and shaping your life. So such important samskaras were also, that also helps in the education, right? Then it is said that Parikshit Maharaj, as soon as Yudhishthir, as soon as Parikshit was born, he gave lot of charity in the form of gold, land, villages, elephant, horses, food, grains, right? So, and it was like a whole celebration. This also is to be understood. Now, charity does not mean you should start giving gold, land, village, elephants, horses. We can't. If you can afford, good for you. If you can't, that's not the point. The point here is that birth of a child is to be seen as a celebration. Whatever within your means, within your capacity, you have to celebrate that. And not just birth of a child, every spiritual activity. Remember last time we discussed how that joy attracts good samskaras. So even in our spiritual activities also, we have to create an environment of celebration. That is why you will see in Vedic culture, every celebration, there is no morbid celebrations. They're not such boring celebrations where you're just dressed in black and white. And some silence is maintained in that ceremony. It's all colorful, some loud music is played, all this is done because that creates the mood of pleasure and environment. And that is how spiritual education should also be, right? That and also charity attracts certain positive energy into our life. It's a yajna, it's a kind of a sacrifice, and any kind of a sacrifice attracts positive energy in return, right? So that's the next aspect. Charity and celebration is another important aspect of spiritual education. And then very powerful. So when these great sages, when they were invited, they start blessing the child by saying that how, oh great king, this child will become the chief of the Purus, that dynasty. And indeed, your child, this spotless son, has been restored by the all-powerful, all-pervasive Vishnu in order to oblige you. He has saved when he was doomed to be destroyed by this supernatural weapon. For this reason, he will be well known all over the world as the one who has been protected by the Lord, Vishnu Rata, one who is protected by Lord Vishnu. So, by giving this title Vishnu Rata, it's a blessing that the sages give. And this is also another important aspect to become a good disciple, a good student, to become a good spiritualist. We need to collect blessings from advanced souls. Because at some point in our spiritual journey, we will confront a challenge which is beyond our capacity. And we need to rely on something higher than us. And blessings are those higher energies that will help us in going beyond our own individual capacities, right? So that's also that all these factors went into making the Parikshit the great devotee that he eventually became, right? So then, O King Yudhishthira, he will become as saintly, as pious in his very name, and as famous and glorified in his achievements as others who appeared in the great royal family. So this is also very important. Having the right environment and sangha around you. Parikshit was born in such a great family, in such a great lineage, right? It's not ordinary, it's not easy to become such an advanced soul. So what being born in a great family does is gives them the great association. So surrounding yourself with that kind of advanced souls, if you cannot surround yourself, whenever you get an opportunity, associate with such advanced souls, some committed, deep spiritualists, whenever you get an opportunity, right? Why? What Sangha and environment does, it creates in you a spiritual identity. Think about it, is very deep. Our identity is shaped by the company we keep, right? So if you keep a worldly minded company and try practicing spirituality, right, you are going to create a lot of inner tension, because during your spiritual practice you are trying to focus on something higher, but your mind will gravitate towards the worldliness, right? So your sangha, your association determines your identity. So having the right environment around you, having the right kind of association, and in this case, he was fortunate to have that association right at home, right? Not all of us may be fortunate. If you can create that environment at home, if not, you need to have regular time in a week, in a month, if not at least in a year, where you go spend time with such spiritually minded people, so that you can recharge yourself and create that strong spiritual identity for yourself, right? That's why you would have noticed how when you spend time with this spiritualists, right? Or I'm sure when you came to Eco Village and when you did your TTC and you are in that very strong spiritual environment, you went back and said, yes, from today, I'm a spiritualist, until life takes over. Right? But actually, life didn't take over. The other kind of sangha association took over you, right? So, like I said, your association shapes your identity. So you have to be very, as much as you work on your own personal sadhana, it's even more important to work on your sangha, your association, right? That's like the shield that protects your personal practice, right? And then yeah, he says that how uh, uh, he will have all these right qualities, right? He'll be saying that the child will be exactly like King Ishwaku in maintaining all those who are born. So now, starting from this verse on, some amazing qualities are described. And this is a very important point, that to become a good student, we need to imbibe certain good qualities. And throughout the Bhagavad Gita, the Mahabharata, Ramayana, any scripture you read, you will see there are so many divine qualities, Daivi Gunas, some divine qualities are described, because a seeker, it's not just some intellectual approach, it's not just some technique based approach, it's about shaping your own personality. That's what makes one a spiritualist. And that develops by that comes by developing certain consciously developing certain good qualities. So what are those qualities that we should develop? Very beautifully it is described. First, of course, because Parikshit is also going to be a king, so certain leadership qualities also described, but along with that, being a king, he was also a great spiritualist. Certain spiritual qualities will also be described, right? So he says first, he is King Ishwaku. He's a great king, ancestor of Lord Rama, in maintaining those who are born. Basically, he is a very, very responsible leader as a king. And for those following the spiritual principles, the Brahminical principles, and especially in being true to his promise, he'll be exactly like Rama, the son of Dashrath, right? So, which means a good disciple lives up to his promises. Because in spiritual journey, we take certain vows, we make certain promises to the spiritual master. A good disciple, a good student is one who lives up to their promises, right? And then this child will be munificent donor of charity and will be protector of surrender, right? So this principle of charity basically is a quality of the or developing the ability to let go, right? Because when you're parting, you don't give some torn sock in charity. That's not called charity, that is called disposing. Charity means something of value which even to you, and you're parting it away from you and giving it to someone else for their need. So as a disciple also, we need to cultivate that kind of ability to let go and not get obsessed, not become too possessive about the things that we have, right? And he's a protector of the surrendered as a leader. And like some kings like Shibi and Ushinara are quoted. And he will expand the name and fame of his family like Bharata, the son of Maharaj Dushyanta. So expanding the name and fame of family, this is also very important. As a disciple, not only are you upholding your own personal character, but you are also representing a whole tradition. So this is the responsibility of a disciple to, and what brings in that kind of seriousness in our own practice is how in the eyes of the society, you are now not just an individual, you are representing a whole tradition, and your behavior is going to reflect on how the society is going to judge this tradition. I remember, when I first started wearing this tilak, this sacred marking on my forehead, right? My teacher, very, when you're new, you're all excited about all the symbolisms and all the mannerisms and the attires and the lingos and all that. So he saw that and he said, Prabhu, very good, you can wear this tilak, but please be ready for the responsibility. I said, what responsibility? I thought it's a courageous act to walk around the street wearing this. I said, no, it's a responsibility. Now, whatever the way you behave, people are going to judge the entire tradition. So then I understood, oh my God, it's a big weight on my forehead. It's a big responsibility on my forehead. It's not just some frivolous fashion statement I'm making to the world, right? So this is the important point, that how what makes a disciple also strong is remembering that I'm carrying a responsibility of the whole tradition, and that makes one more committed and serious. How we behave with others, how we behave in our own personal life, all this, it's like a whole filter that will come in your life. Even though you feel like shouting at someone in public, you will hold yourself. No, my misbehavior is going to affect a whole tradition. Let me deal with this person in a polite way, in a responsible way, right? A sense of responsibility is instilled, right? That's another beautiful quality of a disciple. Then more qualities. Again, he'll be a great bowman. This child will be as good as Arjuna. He'll be as irresistible as fire and as unsurpassable as the ocean. Then this child will be as strong as a lion, as worthy a shelter as the Himalayan mountains. He will be forbearing, developing tolerance like earth and his parents. Right? Again, very, very powerful point. How tolerance is also very, very important virtue. In the Bhagavad Gita, before Krishna gave any instruction to Arjuna, the first quality he tells Arjuna, become tolerant. Tam titikshvasa bharata, develop tolerance. That's the first qualification of a spiritual seeker. If you want to become a good student, right? Because there'll be so many distractions around you, so many problems around you, right? So how this tolerance develops, all the previous qualities are needed. Tolerance is not an own independent quality. When we become responsible towards the tradition, when we develop all the other previous qualities, then tolerance naturally comes out of us, right? And then he says, this child will be like his grandfather Yudhishthir or Brahma in terms of equanimity of mind. This is also another quality that a devotee needs to work on, right? And he will be munificent like Lord Shiva, and he will be the resort of everyone, like shelter for everyone, like the Supreme Personality Narayan, who is a shelter even for Goddess of Fortune. And this child will be almost as good as Lord Krishna himself by following in his footsteps. So very, very important. A disciple, uh, and very important and a very cautionary thing also. A disciple has to follow in the footsteps of their previous teachers, the previous acharyas. Now, there's a difference between following and imitation. You're not supposed to imitate the lives of these great, the actions, words, deeds of the great souls, but seek inspiration from them and try to emulate their teachings to the best of your capacity. Because blind imitation will only lead to downfall. Or at the same time saying, oh, they are all so great. Oh, Vyasa is so great. I can never reach his standard. Let me be at my level only. Right? That creates complacency. So there's a very fine balance of not imitating and seeking inspiration. So following the footsteps is very, very important. And he talks about magnanimity and how he's so, righteous and religiously minded like Yayati. And this child will be in patience like the great Bali Maharaj, and a staunch devotee of Lord Krishna like Prahlad Maharaj, like that. So when all these qualities are described whenever we talk about developing such good qualities, it is not that from day one I have to become exalted. As expression goes, drop by drop fills an entire ocean. If you see all the gigantic rivers, take Ganga, Godavari, all the rivers, even all over the world, if you see, where do these rivers come from? Go all the way to, when I had been to Gangotri is the point where Ganga begins. And when you see, it is a glacier which is melting. And it is not, and I had a totally different conception in my mind, because I've never been to that part. I've always seen Ganga downstream, and seeing the ferocity and the intensity with which she flows, and the volume that she has, I thought, oh my God, it must be like a big, gigantic flowing water source. But when I went there, I was amazed. I was shocked to see it just took. The entire glacier is melting drop by drop. And this is what that eventually goes. Of course, there are some other streams also that join, but still, all these gigantic rivers are just collection of few drops. And that's such a powerful lesson if you think about it. All these divine qualities that we're talking about, eventually if you practice them drop by drop, cultivate them drop by drop, and one day you'll have an ocean of qualities with you. So don't get overwhelmed when you read all these qualities. Oh no, I have to become like Rantidev, like Shibi, like Bali, like Prahlad. Don't get overwhelmed. Stand drop by drop, right? Because we need this kind of right role models to emulate, to get inspired by, right? And then something very interesting comes now. Text number 27 says, and then after hearing about his death, which will be caused by the bite of a snake bird sent by a son of a Brahmana, he will get himself freed from all material attachment and surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, taking shelter unto him. After inquiring about proper self-knowledge from the son of Vyasadeva, who will be a great philosopher, He will renounce all material attachment and achieve a life of fearlessness. Now you may be wondering, the child is just born and the astrologers are already predicting when the child will die. Don't they have any sensitivity? Right? Because it's like you go to your friend's house because your friend invited you because they just had a new child, a new baby, and then you go look at the baby and congratulate the parents and say, congratulations, your child will die in 60 to 70 years. Everybody has to die. One who is born has to die. Right? Can you imagine? They will never invite you ever again to their house, right? But of course, understand, this is not that kind of an insensitive prediction, right? Because these wise sages, this is again the beauty of Vedic instructions. While they create joy and celebration, they also ground you in reality. Because joy without grounding will lead to frivolousness. Joy with grounding leads to discipline. So, by describing Parikshit's death, it may seem little sad, but look, the wise sages, whenever they give a bad news, they also give a good news associated with it. They also predicted how he is going to overcome this deadly curse and how he is going to take shelter of Suta Goswami, the son of Vyasa, and he will achieve the perfection of life to the point where Parikshit today, he is known to be the embodiment of one special limb of devotional service called as Shravanam or hearing. Whenever example is quoted for who perfected their life just by hearing Harikatha, Parikshit's name comes first. And for the rest of eternity, Bhagavatam, the best Vedic scripture, it's like the magnum opus of Vyasa, is centered around him. People may, Vyasa wrote many books. He wrote Mahabharata. Within Mahabharata, it is Bhagavad Gita too. But Mahabharata and Gita is not Vyasa's best book. Vyasa's best book is Bhagavatam about Parikshit. That shows how glorious a personality Parikshit was, right? So this, while some end is predicted, some hope was also given as to what ultimate destination Parikshit is going to. That's why you will see later on when we read that particular section where Parikshit is cursed, Parikshit is absolutely unfazed, right? And usually now in retrospect, because we know the whole story, you may be thinking, oh, they predicted it right. But understand it in the context of the story. Maybe, you meet some astrologer and they'll tell you 100 things about you, including, say, your time of death. The nature of the mind is to focus on all those 99 good things. And this one thing you will forget. But when the right situation comes, when that final moment comes, oh, yes, I already heard about it. Right? So, which means Parikshit, he was never disappointed that, oh, anyway, I'm going to die early because of some curse. What's the point of becoming a big emperor? Let me just pass over the kingdom to somebody else. No. While he lived as the greatest emperor. And when he was about to die, he died as the greatest seeker. Therefore, we titled today's class as how a king is born and a seeker is awakened. So Parikshit, he showed both these temperaments, that when it was time to rule, he was the best emperor ever. He was so powerful that a phase of time called as Kali personified, got scared with him. Can you imagine? He said, Kali Yuga itself cannot come into my kingdom. He said, but I am time. I'm a phase of time. How can you stop a phase of time? He had the power to stop a phase of time. They say time and tide wait for none. It can wait for Parikshit. That is how glorious a king he was. So when he was a king, he was the best king ever. And when the time came for him to depart from this world, very easily he was able to disassociate from that role and don a new role as a seeker, sitting at the feet of Sukadeva Goswami. So this transformation in him did not come overnight. It did not, like, in the last moment. It doesn't come like that. It's a whole lifetime of training. That's why Prabhupada many times he would say that if death is the ultimate examination, life is a preparation for that. So we saw all these things that we go in our preparation. One, our childhood impressions, how bhakti begins from the womb. Two, we can take support from certain, secondary Vedic technologies like astrology, etc., to kind of find our path. Three, Vedic samskaras, all these Vedic rituals, especially your name, right, goes into a long way in shaping your identity, shaping your dharma, connecting you to your destiny. Charity and celebration, how charity attracts positive energy and celebration makes things stick in our inner space. Then collecting blessings from sages, from advanced souls, right? Next, by creating the right environment and the right sangha for our spiritual growth, and drop by drop cultivating good qualities in our life. So if we do all this, we will become a worthy disciple, and that will be the best homage we can give to all our teachers, all the great masters like Vyasa, and fulfill our purpose of life. All right, so these are a few thoughts which I wanted to share from this chapter. In the next chapter, something very interesting is going to happen. The storyline is still going to continue. A very heavy chapter, actually. This chapter is actually a chapter on detachment. Right? So Bhagavatam has all flavors. So the very intense, heavy chapter on detachment will come up next time. So we will discuss that. So let's open the forum for any quick questions or comments if anybody may have. So please unmute yourself and feel free to ask any questions. Or if you want to type it in the chat box, you can do so. Otherwise, we can end the class here. All right. Okay. So thank you all so much. So see you all next week. Hare Krishna. Okay. It says we are unable to unmute. Okay. Can you just try again? Or maybe you can just raise your hand and
Yes, Prabhuji.
yeah. Please go on.
So, Prabhuji, we spoke about the association with materialistic people and spiritual people. So, I'm not able to find a balance in between the two. Matlab, because considering my practice schedule, I always miss all the programs
Mm-hmm.
because they start by 7:30 in the evening, and then by the time I go, only prasadam is left.
Okay.
So all that I get to hear is this one class.
Right.
And I don't know, Prabhuji, the more I'm reading, the more I'm getting only confused. So,
See, uh, associating with worldly minded people means when you start being like them, being in the physical proximity and dealing with them as part of your profession does not mean you're associating with them, right? So association basically means three things. We discussed this also in the past. How? One, when there is exchange of food, when there is exchange of gifts, or when there is exchange of confidential matters, or when you open your heart to them. This is how the any kind of association, any kind of bonding with people develops with these three things. So as a part of your profession, when you're dealing with people in general, right? So that's where, if you remember in the 5th chapter of in this discussion, we discussed how what Narada gave to Vyasa was a sense of purpose. So this is something you have to keep reminding yourself every day. If required, like how people, sometimes we chant Mahamantra, like as a japa, we may do some meditation and prayers. You should write your purpose every day 108 times on a paper to remind yourself, why am I doing what I'm
Am
doing,
I doing?
right? So, because that when the purpose becomes clear, then you will see your quote unquote association with worldly people actually is your greatest strength.
Mm.
In fact, if you don't do that, perhaps you may be underutilizing your potential,
Mm.
right? So, on the contrary, if you don't do that, and if you go sit in a satsang, your body will be in the satsang, but you know where your mind will be and what planning it will be doing,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
So the principle here is that understand what association actually means, and center yourself by reminding yourself of the right purpose. And third important, in the long term, work your life schedule in a way that slowly you are able to create for yourself more opportunities for more satsangs. Because
Mm.
whenever you make any sudden transition, it will be difficult for you to sustain,
Sustain it.
right? So it's a whole planning. That's why I said these good qualities, you have to make it drop by drop, right? Usually we are like a whole typhoon or nothing. So it doesn't work that way. So start working on that in the long term, and you will see Krishna will give you the intelligence how to adjust your things. So this two extreme things we need to come out of that kind of a mindset. Mhm. Okay, we'll take one very quick last question. Okay, I see one more hand raised. Um Apurva is asking that how you mentioned that charity attracts positive energy. Krishna also explained charity in three modes. So if someone gives charity in passion, ignorance, will it attract positive energy? Well, you answered your own question, Apurva. Charity means only one charity, that is in the mode of goodness, right? Okay. So, Meghaji, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, yes, Prabhuji.
Please go ahead.
Hare Krishna.
Um,
Yes. So, what I wanted to ask is, in terms of like having satsang itself, so and also in the line of titiksha, building titiksha. So, there is this saying that we have to maintain our sanity while not being engaging with toxic people, but at the same time, sastras recommend us to be tolerant. So, how to find balance between which is in similar line with Mataji asked, but a little different in terms of like if they are not really helpful to help you in the path of growing and improving. So then what we can do to balance our mental regulation or emotional regulation.
well, see, like I said, first level, learn to just, as the expression goes, suck it in, just tolerate them. If that is not happening, and which should not happen also, most cases you will fail. Like the example given is that how a kurma, a tortoise, the moment it senses some danger to itself, it completely withdraws from the situation, right? So that ability to turn inwards, right, is a first level of practice. But that that kind of tolerance, that ability to turn inwards is not possible when you are not sufficiently grounded on something higher. So without that higher taste, you cannot turn yourself inside. So when you are dealing with some kind of toxic people, first level is shield yourself. When that is not working, find your, with every toxicity, you also need something positive. So find your own positive, higher, refreshing source that will help you to maintain your balance. And even after doing that, there will always be this one very special person who is, like you are like how every superhero character has one supervillain, the ultimate nemesis. So destiny creates this one ultimate toxic nemesis for you, who no techniques will work. And when you are fortunate, when you are extremely fortunate, you will confront that person very early in your life. Then that's the time, as I mentioned earlier, when we are challenged beyond our capacity, that's the time to pray and seek blessings for our protection. Right? So at one level, withdraw. Second level, develop a higher connection, a higher taste, something to absorb your mind in a positive, refreshing thing. Third level is praying. So that's how you have to deal with, right? Because sometimes we need to understand that, be very clear about the nature of this world. Don't expect everything to go right. Krishna, when he describes the material world, he calls it as dukkhalayam ashashvatam, not in a pessimistic way, but in a realistic way, because the world is a difficult place to live in. So be very clear in your expectation that you will confront these kind of people and these kind of situations. So stop expecting utopia out of this world, that, oh, now I'm a spiritualist, everything should be nice around me. Give up that expectation, half of your anxiety will go away. Because most of us, we get anxiety because of setting certain false expectations about life. Right? So
Yes.
then, having understood that, okay, now the world is not a utopia, then see, these people are sent in our life specifically to purify us, to remove something in us which they have successfully managed to trigger and pinch us every time. So what
Yes.
me that they have successfully pinched, it's a whole journey that you have to go through, and that journey is unique to you, not to me, not to somebody else. Right? So when you are confronted with such people, it's a blessing,
Blessing.
provided you are under the right guidance to help you identify that. So that's where study of scriptures, your inner reflection, having a mentor to guide you through this situation, all these factors go in this journey of inner discovery and inner purification.
In the same line, I'm just like worried about this thing, like how Arjuna was also looking at the dosh of the other person, like Duryodhan, and not doing what he was meant to do. So similarly, I'm also thinking, maybe I'm also, while I'm observing the that dosh of other person, maybe I'm not purifying that aspect of me. Instead of thinking that they are toxic, maybe some part of me need to be really um, maybe reflected upon. So what I can do on that part to not in the first place, like I'm concerned that why I'm looking at that they are toxic, so why that thought in itself is coming, why I'm not seeing them as part of Godhead.
Again, I'm little concerned about even that mindset.
Oh.
To deny the toxicity of a toxic person is also toxicity. That is toxic positivity. You don't want to err on to that end of the spectrum too. So Arjuna saw the evil in Duryodhan and called out, hey, Duryodhan, therefore. But then Arjuna didn't fight out of a personal grudge. So through the instructions of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna found his inner peace. And a true Kshatriya or a true warrior is the one who fights from a space of inner peace. Otherwise, your battles will become personal and egoistic. So the journey is not to whitewash other people's toxicity and saying everybody is nice, the world is a nice place, you are good, I am good, no. Then you will go into depression very soon. Or you are just randomly fighting at everyone, that is, first case is tamogun, second case is rajogun. Sattvic mentality means where I first identify what is it in me that this person is pinching. Let me address that and find my own inner peace first. And now that I have found my inner peace, I am going to fight with this person for the sake of dharma. Because if I don't, that person will harm somebody else tomorrow. So then your fight will be out of a space of dharma, compassion, and not out of personal grudge. Right? So this is the whole journey you have to go through. And not just push things under the carpet saying everything is nice. Okay. All right. Let's end our discussion here. Thank you all so much for joining us. Right. So see you all next week. Hare Krishna.